Chapter 1. The Woman Who Corrects Executives. Your compliance framework has a gap on page 47. The boardroom went still, not the polite stillness of people waiting for the next slide, the airless, held-breath stillness of people watching something they weren't sure they were allowed to witness. Shin In-tak looked up slowly from the document in front of him. The woman who had spoken hadn't raised her voice, hadn't stood, hadn't done anything dramatic. She sat at the far end of the conference table in a charcoal blazer, one hand resting on her copy of the report, and met his gaze with the particular calm of someone who had already decided she wasn't afraid of him. "Excuse me?" His Korean was precise, clipped. She answered in Korean, perfect Korean, Seoul accented, unhurried. Page 47. The indemnity clause references the 2019 regulatory standard, but South Korea updated that framework in 2022. If this goes before the Financial Crimes Board as written, you're not protected, you're exposed. Someone coughed. A junior associate knocked his pen off the table, reaching for it. In-tak did not look at them. He looked at her. Melissa Crowder looked back. She had been in Seoul for 11 days. She had read every document this company had produced in the last 4 years. She had slept 6 hours total in the last 3 nights, not because she was careless with herself, but because she understood what was at stake, and she did not do halfway. She also understood exactly what just happened in this room. She had corrected the vice chairman of Shin Group in front of his entire executive team, in his language. She waited. In-tak closed the document, set it down with a quiet precision that somehow felt louder than if he'd thrown it. He looked at her for a long moment, not with anger, she noted, but with something more unsettling than anger, calculation. "We'll recess for 15 minutes, he said to the room. Everyone moved immediately. The room emptied with the practiced efficiency of people who had learned not to linger when his voice carried that particular weight. Melissa gathered her notes. "Ms. Crowder," she looked up. "Stay." It wasn't a request. She decided to stay anyway, which was different. He stood at the floor-to-ceiling window, overlooking the Han River, hands clasped behind his back. Seoul spread below them grey and glittering. She remained at the table, watching him. "You enjoy embarrassing executives," he said finally, still in Korean. "I enjoy accuracy," she replied. Same language. "Your executives can manage their own feelings about it." He turned. Up close, he was more striking than he was from across a conference table, which she resented slightly. Sharp jaw, eyes that moved over her face like he was reading a document he hadn't decided whether to trust yet. "You've been in Seoul 11 days. 12 as of this morning. And in 12 days you've reviewed 4 years of internal compliance records, identified a critical exposure in a document my legal team cleared 3 times and corrected me." A pause. In Korean. "Your legal team cleared it because they were looking for the problem they expected to find," she said. "I looked for the problem that was actually there, and yes, in Korean. I was told this would be a Korean language working environment. I prepared accordingly." Something moved across his face, too fast to name. "Where did you learn?" "Graduate school, then practice." She tilted her head slightly. "Does it matter?" "No," he said, and then quieter, almost to himself. "No, it doesn't." He looked at her for a moment longer than was strictly professional. She felt it, the weight of it, the specific quality of attention from a man who did not distribute it carelessly. She had been looked at before, assessed, evaluated, undressed, dismissed. This was different. This was someone trying to understand something. She didn't let it show. "The gap can be corrected before the board filing," she said, returning to the document. "I'll have revised language to your team by end of day." "You'll send it to me directly." She looked up. "Your team handles document review?" "You'll send it to me directly," he repeated. Quiet, final. She held his gaze for a beat. "Fine." She was in the elevator when she allowed herself to exhale. 12 days in Seoul, and she had already made an enemy of the most powerful man in the building. Possibly the most powerful man she had ever been in a room with. And she had been in rooms with senators, federal judges, and one sitting ambassador who had tried to have her contract terminated for asking the wrong questions. She was not afraid of powerful men. She was afraid of this particular feeling, the electric awareness of being truly seen by someone she had no business being seen by. "Get it together, Melissa." Her mother's voice, unbidden. "You walked into that man's house and corrected him at his own table. You know what that means." She did know. It meant this contract was going to be complicated. It meant Shin In-tak was going to be a problem. What she didn't know, what she had no way of knowing standing alone in that elevator as Seoul moved 40 floors below her, was that In-tak was still standing at that window, not reviewing documents, not preparing for the resumed meeting, just standing there, turning over a single thought he couldn't quite put down. Who is she? Not a question. An equation he hadn't solved yet. And Shin In-tak did not leave equations unsolved. Hi ladies, welcome to Afro-Korean Series channel. Sit tight, this isn't your regular fake dating story. Anticipate twists you didn't see coming. Chapter 2. The Terms of Pretending. I need you to be my fiancé. Melissa set down her coffee. Outside the window of In-tak's private office, Seoul was doing what Seoul did at 7 in the morning, moving fast, indifferent, magnificent. She had been summoned here at 6:30, with no explanation, offered coffee she hadn't asked for, and was now being told something she was certain she had misheard. "I'm sorry. You heard me." In-tak stood behind his desk, jacket off, sleeves rolled to the forearm, looking like a man who hadn't slept and had spent the sleepless hours arriving at a conclusion he'd already decided was correct. The board is under pressure. The investigation has created a narrative. Foreign influence, compromised leadership, outside interference. Shareholders are nervous. A strategic engagement stabilizes the story. The story, she repeated. It demonstrates confidence. It signals that I am not threatened by the investigation, that I invited the process, that I trust it enough to build a life alongside it. Melissa looked at him for a long moment. You want to use our professional proximity to manufacture a love story for public consumption. I want to protect 4,000 jobs from a hostile takeover engineered by men who've been waiting 15 years for a crack in this company's foundation. His voice didn't rise. It never rose. The engagement is the crack filler. And I'm the filler. Something shifted in his expression. Barely. You're the most credible person in this building right now. The board knows it. The media will know it. A woman of your caliber choosing me is not a distraction. It's a statement. She almost laughed. Almost. That might be the most backhanded compliment anyone has ever paid me. It wasn't a compliment. It was an assessment. Even worse. She picked up her coffee again. No. He didn't argue. That surprised her. He pulled a single folder from his desk and set it in front of her without a word. She opened it, because she was constitutionally incapable of not opening a folder placed in front of her. Financial projections, takeover timeline, employee impact analysis, 4,037 names represented by numbers on a spreadsheet, and beneath the numbers, pension funds, dependent healthcare, severance cliffs. She read every page. He waited. That was the thing about him she was already learning. He knew how to wait. Most powerful men filled silence with more talking, more convincing, more performance. In-tak went quiet and let information do the work. It was, she thought reluctantly, effective. How long? She asked without looking up. 6 months. Possibly 8. Terms. Excuse me? She closed the folder and looked at him directly. If I agree, and I haven't, I want terms, written, binding. He studied her. You want a contract for a fake engagement. I want a contract for my autonomy inside a fake engagement. There's a difference. She set the folder down. No interference with my work, no surveillance, no access to my personal communications. No family involvement in my professional decisions. Agreed. I'm not finished. She held his gaze. Public appearances are negotiated in advance. I approve any statements made about me or attributed to me. And when this ends, when you end it, because we both know how this story goes, it is handled with full dignity. No narrative where I'm the casualty. The room was quiet. Intac looked at her with that expression again. The one she couldn't name. The one that felt less like assessment, and more like something he was trying to keep contained. You've done this before, he said. Negotiated your own protection. I've learned to. She didn't elaborate. She didn't need to. He was quiet for a moment. Then, agreed. All of it. I want it in writing by end of day. You'll have it within the hour. She exhaled slowly, looked out at Seoul, at the river catching early, light in the distance, silver and indifferent. I need you to understand something, she said quietly. I am doing this for those 4,000 people, not for you, not for this company's stock price, not for any other reason. I know. I don't think you do. She turned back to him. I grew up watching people get discarded when they became inconvenient. I will not be managed, maneuvered, or made into a footnote in your company's recovery story. If you treat me like a prop, even once, I walk, contract or no contract. Intac was very still. I don't use people as props, he said finally. You just asked me to pretend to be in love with you. I asked you to protect something that matters. A pause. Something quieter moved through his voice. I did not say it would require pretending. The air in the room changed. Melissa felt it and refused to acknowledge it. I'll review the contract when it arrives, she said, standing. Professional, composed, every wall back in place. She was at the door when he spoke again. Melissa. She stopped. He had never used her first name before. Thank you. She didn't turn around. Don't thank me yet, she said. You haven't seen me at a gala. She heard something that might, in another man, have been the beginning of a laugh. She kept walking. The contract arrived 43 minutes later, every term she had specified. Honored exactly. She sat at her desk and read it 3 times, looking for the trap. There wasn't one. That bothered her more than if there had been. Chapter 3. The crack becomes a door. You're not sleeping. Intac didn't turn from the balcony railing. Below them, the Han River moved through the city, like it had somewhere important to be, dark and silver, and unbothered by the 2 people standing above it in silence. I sleep, he said. You were standing here when I came out at 2 in the morning. Melissa pulled her robe tighter against the night air. And at 4, that's not sleeping. That's waiting for something bad to happen. A beat. Old habit. From when? He was quiet long enough that she thought he wouldn't answer. That was his pattern. Questions he didn't want to engage with met a wall of silence so complete, you started to wonder if you'd spoken out loud. Then. I was 22. A man my father trusted like a brother falsified financial records and put my name on them. My father believed him. He said it the way people say things they've said only to themselves for years. Flat, careful, like handling something that still had edges. I spent 8 months proving my innocence to a man who should have known it without proof. Melissa was quiet. Did he apologize? He acknowledged the facts. That's not the same thing. No, Intac said. It isn't. She moved to the railing beside him, not touching, close enough that the warmth between them was its own presence. Is that why you don't sleep, still waiting for the next person to believe the wrong thing about you? He looked at her then, really looked at her, the way he did in boardrooms when he was trying to solve an equation, except this time she had the unsettling feeling she was not the equation. She was the answer. Why are you awake? He asked instead. She almost deflected. Almost. Same reason, she admitted quietly. Different story. He took her to Incheon the following Sunday, not Seoul. not anywhere associated with Shin Group or cameras or the careful architecture of their public performance. A small coastal town where the water was grey-green and the air smelled like salt and fish, and something older than both of them. "My grandmother lived here," he said, walking beside her along a narrow street. No security visible, no schedule. "When things became too loud in Seoul, my father would send me here for summers. I think he meant it as punishment. It never felt like one." "What did it feel like?" "Like being allowed to be nobody for a while." A pause. "I haven't been back in 6 years." Melissa looked at him sideways. "Why now?" He didn't answer immediately. They walked past a small temple, past a woman selling persimmons from a cart, past a group of children chasing each other with the specific reckless joy of people who haven't learned to be careful yet. "You asked me once if I ever stopped calculating risk," he said finally. "On the balcony, 3 weeks ago. I've been thinking about it since." He stopped walking, turned to face her. "I brought you here because this is the only place I've ever been where I didn't." The wind off the water moved through the space between them. Melissa felt something shift in her chest, quiet and tectonic and frightening. "Don't," she told herself. "Don't you dare." He showed her the piano that evening. It sat in the corner of his grandmother's house, still maintained inexplicably by a neighbor who had known the family for 40 years. Upright, dark wood, the kind of instrument that held memory in its keys. "Play something," she said. "I haven't in years." "I know. Play something anyway." He sat. She stood beside him. He placed his hands on the keys with the particular hesitation of someone returning to something they'd loved and abandoned, and weren't sure still recognized them. He played. It wasn't perfect. There were hesitations, a missed note in the second phrase, but it was beautiful the way imperfect things are beautiful. Because the feeling inside it was real. She watched his face while he played, the careful blankness he maintained in every boardroom, every press appearance, every room with more than 2 people in it, gone. Just a man and something he'd loved before the world taught him loving things made you vulnerable. She kissed him before she made the decision to. He went still for half a second. Then his hand came up to her face, and he kissed her back with the quiet intensity of a man who had been waiting for permission he hadn't known he needed. When they separated, he didn't move his hand. "Melissa," her name in his mouth, low and careful. "Don't analyze it," she said softly. "I'm not." His thumb moved once across her cheekbone. I'm not analyzing it." They married 3 months later, small, private. A single room with close friends, and his grandmother's neighbor who cried through the entire ceremony and kept calling Melissa beautiful girl in a dialect she only half understood. No press, no strategy, no contract, just choice. Standing across from him, watching him read his vows from a folded piece of paper, with the focused concentration of a man who had written and rewritten them until they were exactly true, Melissa felt something she hadn't let herself feel in longer than she could remember. Safe. Not saved. Not protected. Not managed. Safe. The kind that lives in the chest. The kind you can't negotiate for. She didn't know, standing in that small room with salt air coming through the window and his hand warm around hers, that 3 rows back his mother was smiling. Perfectly. Watching everything, filing it away. Chapter 4. The Envelope. "You're glowing." Melissa looked up from her laptop. Ji-yeon, the assistant Shin Group had assigned her on arrival, was standing in the doorway of her home office with 2 cups of tea and the particular expression of a woman who had decided something was her business. "I'm working," Melissa said. "You're glowing while working." Ji-yeon set a cup beside the laptop without being invited. "Also, you've been humming. You don't hum. I hum. In the 8 months I've worked for you, I have never once heard you hum." She sat down across from her, uninvited, which was also characteristic. "Something happened." Melissa looked at her for a moment, then, quietly. "I think I'm pregnant." Ji-yeon's cup stopped halfway to her mouth. "Think or know?" "No, as of this morning." She said it carefully, like she was still deciding how it felt. I wasn't expecting it. Are you happy? The question sat in the air between them, simple, enormous. Melissa looked down at her hands, at the ring on her left hand that had started as strategy and become something she reached for in the dark. I'm terrified, she said honestly. But yes, I think I am. She told Intac that evening. She had planned to wait, to find the right moment, the right words, the right conditions. She had a whole architecture of preparation built in her head, and she dismantled it the moment he walked through the door and looked at her the way he always looked at her now, like she was the first thing all day that made sense. I'm pregnant. He stopped moving. The room was very quiet. She watched his face cycle through something she couldn't fully read. Shock, then something rawer than shock, then an expression she had only seen once before, on a coastal street in Incheon, when he told her this was the only place he didn't calculate risk. He crossed the room and pulled her into his chest. Not carefully, not with the measured precision he brought to everything else. He held her like she was something he hadn't known he was missing until this exact moment, and now couldn't imagine losing. His voice, when it came, was barely above a whisper. Mine. She closed her eyes. For a while, for a beautiful, uncomplicated while, everything was exactly right. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday. Intac's assistant brought it personally, which was unusual. No return address. Marked private. Inside, photographs. Melissa at dinner with James Whitfield, the American investor. Candlelit restaurant, both leaning forward, her hand near his on the table. The angle was intimate, deliberate. The timestamps placed it during the period before their relationship became real. The weeks when they were still performing for cameras, still pretending, still telling themselves it was strategy and nothing more. The note was 4 words. Calculate the dates. A friend. Intac's mother had known about the envelope before it reached his desk. She had, in fact, ensured it reached his desk. The original copy had been intercepted 2 days earlier by a junior compliance officer who had flagged it as a potential smear attempt and routed it to legal review. She had quietly redirected it, a phone call, a favor owed. The kind of move that left no fingerprints because it required no forging, only redirection. She sat now in her sitting room on the 4th floor of the family compound, hands folded, tea cooling beside her. She had been 17 when she married into this family. She had spent 20 years building something inside these walls through patience and strategy and the careful management of every variable that threatened what she'd built. She understood better than anyone how quickly the wrong woman could dismantle a man's judgment. She had seen it happen to her husband. She would not watch it happen to her son. The foreign woman was brilliant. She would grant her that. Sharp enough to see around corners, composed, enough to never let them see her sweat. Under different circumstances, she might have respected her, but she had watched her son's face across a dinner table 3 months ago. Watched the way his eyes moved to Melissa without his permission, the way he laughed at something she said with his whole chest instead of the polite, contained sound he'd performed his entire adult life. That was not a man making a strategic decision. That was a man falling. Falling men made mistakes. Intac did not ask Melissa about the photographs. That was the thing she would never fully forgive. Not the doubt itself, but the silence around it. The decision to investigate instead of simply turning to the woman sleeping beside him and asking one question. Instead, he went quiet in the particular way she was still learning to read. Not his thinking quiet, not his tired quiet, but a new quality of stillness that felt like distance measured in inches. She noticed. She asked him twice if something was wrong. Work, he said both times. She believed him because she wanted to. His mother came for tea that Friday. She arrived with white peonies, Melissa's favorite, which she had somehow learned. and sat across from her in the living room with the warmth of a woman making a genuine effort. "You look well," she said. "Marriage suits you." "Thank you." Melissa poured tea, watched her. "My son carries a great deal." She said it gently, carefully. "He has always needed someone strong beside him. I hope you know that what he shows the world is not everything he is." "I know that." "Good." A smile, warm, reaching nowhere near her eyes. "Because the people who love him most are the ones who protect him. Even from himself." The sentence landed softly, like a warning dressed as tenderness. Melissa set down the teapot. "I'll keep that in mind," she said quietly. She smiled back. Neither of them meant it. Chapter 5. Not my child. "Something's wrong." Melissa said it quietly, to no one. Ji-yeon had already gone home. In-tak was at a board meeting that had run 3 hours past its scheduled end. The penthouse was dark, except for the kitchen light she'd left on, and she was standing in the living room with one hand pressed flat against her stomach, and a feeling she couldn't name moving through her like cold water. She called him. It rang 4 times. "I'm in a meeting." "Something's wrong," she said again. "With the baby. I need you to come home." Silence. Then, "I'm leaving now." He didn't make it in time. The pain arrived in waves, sharp, then sharper, then the kind that took her breath completely. She called an ambulance herself, calmly, the way she did everything, giving her address in Korean, answering their questions, unlocking the front door before her legs stopped cooperating. She was on the floor of the living room when they found her. She did not cry. She held her stomach and breathed and told herself, "He's coming. He's coming. You are not doing this alone," and believed it because she had to. The private hospital was white and quiet and moved with the specific urgency of people trained not to look alarmed. They prepped her quickly. Possible placental complication. Early intervention required. The doctor spoke to her in careful, measured Korean, and she understood every word and wished briefly that she didn't. In-tak arrived as they were wheeling her toward the procedure room. She saw him from the end of the corridor, jacket open, tie loosened, moving through the hospital with the focused energy of a man displacing fear with motion. His eyes found her immediately. She reached for his hand. "Stay," she said, "please." He looked at her. She watched something move through his face, and for one terrible moment, she thought it was relief. That he had arrived and she was alive, and the thing he'd been carrying in silence for 2 weeks was going to resolve itself without him having to speak it. Then his jaw tightened. "Were you with Whitfield?" The corridor went very quiet. "What?" "The photographs." His voice was low, controlled, the way it got when he was most dangerous. "The dinner, before we were married. I need you to tell me." "I am on a hospital bed," she said softly. "I know. I need to know." In-tak. Her voice didn't shake. She would not let it shake. "I am about to go into a procedure room and you are asking me this now." His jaw worked. "The timeline is our child." The words came out quiet and absolute. "That is our child. And you know that. You know me." He looked at her for a long moment, and then, "God help her," he said it. "Not my child." The nurse beside her made a small, involuntary sound. Melissa felt the words land the way you feel an impact before the pain registers. A strange, suspended moment where everything goes very still and you understand that something has broken that cannot be immediately assessed. She released his hand. She turned her face toward the ceiling. "Take me in," she said to the nurse, calm, empty. "Please." She did not look at him again. The baby survived, a boy, small but fierce, the doctor said, with the particular approval of someone who respected stubbornness on principle. Melissa survived. She lay in the recovery room afterward, in the specific silence of someone who has decided to feel nothing until they are somewhere safe enough to feel everything. The monitors beeped. The city moved outside the window, indifferent as always. Intact sat in the corridor. She knew because Ji-yeon, who had arrived 40 minutes after the ambulance, told her. He had not left, had not eaten, had not spoken to anyone except to ask twice if she was all right, and accept the answer without entering the room. She did not invite him in. His investigator called at 11 the next morning. Intact took the call in the hospital corridor, one hand pressed flat against the wall, listening. The photographs were doctored. A forensic analysis confirmed timestamp manipulation. The dinner had occurred. Whitfield had pursued a professional meeting she had attended and documented in her own compliance records, visible to anyone who had thought to look. The angle suggesting intimacy was manufactured through cropping. The leak traced back to Director Bayek, a rival board member who had been engineering the hostile takeover from inside the company for 18 months. And the envelope's routing, the redirection from legal review to his desk, traced back to a phone call made from the family compound, his mother's private line. He stood in that corridor for a long time. He thought about Melissa on the hospital bed, reaching for his hand. He thought about the nurse's face. He thought about 3 words he could not take back. He had survived his father believing lies over loyalty. He had become his father anyway. He walked into her room without knocking. She looked at him from the bed. No anger, no tears, just a distance that was worse than both. The distance of someone who has rearranged themselves around an absence. "Get out," she said quietly. "Melissa, I heard you in that corridor." Her voice was steady. "I was in pain and I reached for you and you asked me that." A pause. "Get out of my room. I need to think." He didn't move immediately. "The child is mine," he said. "I know that now. I knew it then." She looked at him directly. "The difference between us is that I never needed proof." He left. Chapter 6, The Kneeling. "You're leaving." It wasn't a question. Intact stood in the doorway of their bedroom. Their bedroom still, technically, though she had been sleeping in the guest room since coming home from the hospital, watching Melissa fold a cream blouse with the particular care of someone who had decided every movement would be deliberate from now on. The suitcase on the bed was half full. "I'm going to Chicago for a while," she said, without looking up. "Ji-yeon is forwarding my remaining contract work. Everything professional will be handled correctly. I'm not concerned about the contract." "I know." She folded another blouse. "That's not why I mentioned it." He stepped into the room. She didn't stop him, but she didn't look at him either. Kept her eyes on her hands, on the careful geometry of folded fabric, on anything that wasn't his face. "My mother has been removed from all company access," he said. "Permanently. The board was informed this morning. Director Bayek's involvement is being prepared for public disclosure. The full investigation, the doctored photographs, the envelope routing, all of it, will be released to the press by end of week." "I know, Ji-yeon told me. I wanted you to hear it from me." "You're a little late," she said quietly, "with things you wanted me to hear from you." The room was very still. He had watched his mother leave the compound 2 days ago. She had walked out with the composed dignity of a woman who had prepared for this possibility and refused to grant it the satisfaction of her tears. At the door, she had turned and looked at him, not with anger, not with pleading, but with something that looked almost like recognition. "I did what I thought protected you," she said. "You taught me," he replied, "to believe the worst before I believed the best. I'm done learning that lesson." She left without another word. He had stood in the empty entrance hall for a long time afterward, understanding that some things you grieve even when they were never entirely good. "Melissa," she stopped folding, "I am not going to tell you that I was manipulated. I was. I'm not going to tell you the photographs were designed to exploit my worst fear. They were." He moved to stand on the other side of the suitcase, close enough that she would have to choose to keep avoiding his eyes. "None of that is why I said what I said. I said it because I chose to. Because when it came to the moment of trusting you or protecting myself, I protected myself." She looked at him then. His face was open, unguarded in a way she had only seen twice before. Once on a coastal street in Incheon, once at a piano he hadn't touched in years. "You were in pain," he continued. "You reached for me, and I—" His voice dropped. "I will hear myself say those words for the rest of my life." "Good," she said. Not cruelly, just honestly. He nodded once, accepting it. Then Shin In-tak did something she had never seen him do. He moved around the suitcase and he knelt. Not dramatically, not theatrically. He went down on both knees on the bedroom floor with the quiet gravity of a man who had decided this was the only honest position left to him, and he was done performing dignity he hadn't earned. "I know you don't need me to choose you," he said. "You have never needed that. You would go to Chicago and rebuild and be extraordinary and never look back, and part of you should." He looked up at her. "I'm asking you not to, not because I deserve it, because I love you, because our son deserves to watch his father be the man his mother always knew he could be, and because I am—" His voice broke slightly, just at the edge. "I am asking you, Melissa. I am asking." She looked at him for a long time. The suitcase sat between them, half full, waiting. She thought about her mother staying too long with a man who loved power more than loyalty. She thought about the promise she had made, herself, that she would never beg to be chosen. Then she asked herself the question she had been circling for days. Am I staying because I'm afraid to leave? Or because he is finally, actually, the man I needed him to be? She stood with it, turned it over, looked at him on that floor, not performing, not managing, not calculating, and found her answer in the stillness of him, in the fact that he was not trying to look like anything other than what he was. A man who had broken something precious and knew it, and was not asking her to pretend otherwise. She exhaled slowly, and then the baby kicked. Hard, insistent, the way he'd been kicking for 3 weeks, as if he had opinions about everything already. Her hand moved to her stomach without thinking. In-tak's hand moved at the same moment, reaching toward her, then stopping, asking without asking. She looked at his hand, at his face. She took his hand and placed it against her stomach. He went completely still. The baby kicked again. Something in In-tak's face broke open, not shattered, not destroyed, but opened, the way a window opens, letting in air that had been kept out too long. His eyes closed briefly. When he looked at her again, there was nothing managed in his expression, nothing contained, just a man overwhelmed by what he almost lost. Trust did not return all at once. It came back the way it always does, in small increments, in kept promises, in the 100 ordinary moments that mean nothing individually and everything collectively. Therapy, boundaries made explicit and honored. A language between them built word by careful word. When their son was born on a Thursday morning in early spring, In-tak cried openly in the delivery room. No restraint, no image management, just a man undone by the specific miracle of life continuing despite everything. They named him Seo Jin, in Korean, a family that becomes the world. At a small ceremony afterward, blending the traditions of both their families, her grandmother's kente cloth beside his family's ancestral colors, jollof rice beside japchae, 2 cultures finding the grammar of each other. In-tak stood and said simply, "My wife is the strongest decision I have ever made." Melissa looked at him across the room. She had not stayed because she was afraid to leave. She had stayed because he had finally, without calculation, without strategy, without anything except the honest weight of a man chosen her. And she had decided that was worth building on. Outside, Seoul moved the way it always did, fast, indifferent, magnificent. Inside, for the first time in a long time, everything was quiet. And it was enough. Hi fam, thanks for sticking to this story till the end. I appreciate you. If this story resonated with you, feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. See you in the next story.